Welcome to Resonance, podcast by Quetzal y Andrade, where we talk about bass, effects, and life things. It has been a really long time since the last podcast, so I may ramble more than usual. In fact, this podcast is deliberately going to be jumping all over the place just to catch up on the last month and a half of events, right? Interests, live shows, gear, and where my head's at as far as music and recording and all things music. So I had a month run, and not literally run as in burning calories. I don't do that. I need to. I should. Once I turn 40 in April, I told myself I will run twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, and at least do something every morning to get my body into some sort of rhythm, right? Get limber, get used to, I guess, getting the blood flow moving the way it should, and the muscles, the attention that they need, right? I hear once you turn 40, losing muscle can be a very real thing on an exponential level, and that, whatever routine you got going on once you hit 40, that can really dictate the quality of life and or longevity thereafter. So again, gonna whip myself in shape. April 22nd, my birthday, and that's the plan. So anyway, went on a tangent on that, but the month run of 5 bands within 30 days was a blast. I played with Ralph Edwards and the Vibe Check Band on February 14th, Valentine's Day, at the Warner's Theater in downtown Fresno. And that was loads of fun. A new experience for the band, and I have played at the Warner's Theater before, but many years ago, back when I was 21, 22 years old. And I do have a story, to tell or share about that time that I got to play in the Warner's Theater for the first time. But I'll get to that in a bit. The week after, I played with a Bella Trio, which was always loads of fun. The week after that, I played with Fritzo, and then we had a FYB Sade tribute show, which was, again, loads of fun. All the bands are just a great time. But did that, and then a couple days after that, I performed with Andromeda Azul, my original trio, which, although we do original music, all original music, every gig, we went on a limb this time to perform Bad Bunny music as instrumental jazz interpretations, right? And it was a blast. I'm glad we took the challenge on. Working out presets for different bass synth sounds was loads of fun. So there was plenty of homework on my end, not to mention getting together and doing a couple series trying to get in on this. But yeah, it was loads of fun to work that up. And the cool thing is that a bunch of people were like, yeah, we want to see that again. We want to have you in our venues doing that kind of act as well. So pretty cool in the sense that we I don't want to say hippified, but we definitely jazzified Bad Bunny music, and it was a great time, and people loved it. So anyway, enough about that. Still excited that we did it, and that it's to be done again. So that was the 30-day run, and yet last week on March 12th, kind of dating this podcast, right? Last week on March 12th, we ended up playing with the Abella Trio again, and hence the cycle starts over, right? I don't know that I'll play with all 5 bands in the next 30 days again, but that was a great cycle or weekly variation, right, to my live musical performance and experience. But back to the Warner's Theater, I did want to talk about when I was 21 or 22 years old. I was in this group called the Patrick Contreras Band, or Patrick Contreras Trio. We were a trio, but I think we used the word band. I was in it for about 3 years, and the cool thing was that the frontman is a rock violinist, right? He has an acoustic violin that he runs through effects pedals and through a little guitar amp and just starts shredding, a la Jimi Hendrix or whatever. And it's psychedelic rock vibes all night. And being the only harmonic accompaniment, being the bass player and juggling an auxiliary keyboard on the side was loads of fun, because then come solo time, or really at any point in the music, if I wanted to reharmonize or do some random, chord progression, bridge type of thing during a solo or song or vamp, I could definitely do that, because my right hand and my left hand are part of me, right? And I would be able to synchronize my thoughts on the low end and on the harmonic keyboard side simultaneously, right? So it was a great time with the Patrick Contreras band, and obviously he was the front man. Drummer was Jason Williams, great guy, great drummer, and that was it. And so we did it for about 3 years, and somewhere towards the end, we ended up getting invited to open up for B.B.King at the Warner's Theater on New Year's Eve. And we're like, what? Opening up for B.B.King, the legend, right? It's just, that was such a cool thing to get invited to do, and then actually follow through and do it. So there it is. Got to open up for B.B.King. That's a awesome notch on the belt, and very humbling experience how somebody of his caliber could wow people and bring attendance and still just kind of like add validity to music, live music, even in his old age, right? They had to assist him on stage from his wheelchair. But very cool thing to see that he was still a beast on his instrument. Needed no help there. But the fact was that opening up for B.B. King wasn't all that thrilling musically. This time around, right, it was the same experience, right? The same perspective for me. The room is way too boomy. It's not acoustically great. Even if all seats are filled, it's gonna be very, very reverb heavy. And it doesn't matter who the sound guy is or who the band is, it's gonna be boomy all night long. And so that was a little bit, disappointing, but it is what it is. I didn't have my inner monitor system connected, although I wasn't really given that option. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't trying to be a diva at this event or anything. Everybody was using a wedge monitor, so I was just like, hey, when in Rome, I'm gonna go with this and not create more waves on an already chaotic rehearsal / sound check. But again, another thing that added, or actually made the experience not all that thrilling this time around, and the first time I played many, many, many years ago, was the fact that everybody's so far away from each other. It's a big stage, and so you have plenty of room to, not be able to be in arm's reach, right? It's kind of sad, right? We're so used to playing so close together at private parties, at local venues, and so it was very unintimate in that sense. It was unintimate because the crowd was way far away. There was no dance floor, and then all the band members were spread apart, all too uncomfortably far, in my opinion. Sure, having a big stage and that kind of audience, larger audience and whatnot was great, but I felt like I've had more fun playing at private parties for like 20 people, 30 people than I did back when I was 21 at the Warner's Theater, or even now almost 40 at the Warner's Theater in recent times. So my perspective, my venting, it's what it is. Maybe at some point I'll get used to that if we do it more on the regular, or I will learn to submerge myself into that type of scene better. But when that time comes, I'll let you know. Let's see. I said this podcast would jump around, and it will. Oh, the Bad Bunny Jazz Night. The synth effects, right? I was listening to the original music, and then I'd be like toggling between certain pedals to see if I could dial in a tone that was similar or dead on, and really nothing was dead on. And I was completely fine with it because sonically it still gave the same type of impression or feeling, and closely enough to where you didn't have to worry about like, hey, is this a Bad Bunny? No, you hear the bass line, you hear some of the effect, you're gonna know that that's exactly what it is. There's no doubt. Um, so yeah, there was a good amount of time experimenting with sound effects, synth effects, and then saving them in a way that I could easily access them. And a majority of the synth sounds actually ended up saving on my Zoom MS60B. That was my usual preference for creating or dialing the synth presets. But I did use my OC2, uh, preset that I've created on my Ampero. It it was definitely used plenty throughout the night, and man, I want to say I used about 4 different synth presets. There was the OC2, there was one that I called bass synth, another one, the Moog synth. There was a phone synth I call phone synth. I don't know why it reminds me of like old telephones. Um, and then was there one other one? Oh, then there's my ocean synth. That's just really big, long, sustaining type of, slightly gritty, almost like string sounding synth. So I would say I used about 5 synth presets, and it was a great time to be able to like flip between those and then a regular dry bass sound for solos and whatnot. But anyway, that was fun. I have recently decided to, and this hurts, to take off my red button JHS remote switch, right, foot switch that I have connected to my Ampero. I've had that on there for a year, 2 years, I don't even know, but it seems like forever. And to me, that JHS red remote foot switch is iconic looking. I had a little aluminum red button top on top of the foot switch. It gave the pedal board a look. It was close to my EHX Pico Pog, which is also red, and I felt all that red just complemented the board, gave it enough accent, and yes, aesthetics matter. So taking it off definitely hurt a little bit visually and whatnot, and just, I don't know. I see pictures and I'm like, man, it looks so good. But anyway, I have moved on and tried a new approach towards my mini mono light pedal board. And I ordered a Pedalnetics dual foot switch, which is just a thin little bar which would have needed to be placed on top of the Ampero or somewhere on the board, which with limited space I didn't have very many options, but I figured I'd make it work, right? So I connected the dual foot switch. Everything worked out great, being able to access stomp mode way more easily instead of having to double click the red JHS remote, because it has a TS output or cable, and it would not work even if you used a TRS cable. So having to double click every time to access stomp mode or to get back into patch mode was kind of annoying, but I just rolled with it for over a year because it looked great and it fit on my board, my already small, cramped up board. So anyway, I ended up getting this dual switch, and all of a sudden you click it once, it's super fast, it goes into stomp mode or patch mode, and then you can assign yet the other switch to looper, control, mode, banking, whatever you want to assign. And so I've decided to use it to access the looper, depending on the situation. If it's a solo gig, if I am in a cover band situation, I have it in control mode, so it can easily just access more than one block change in the actual preset, and so that just facilitates and expedites the tone changing process. Love it. So anyway, there's that. However, to mount it was like, okay, where am I going to put it? Obviously it has to go either onto the Ampero 2, which makes it all the more tall, how secure is that going to be once it's in the case, being tossed around a bit? So I was like, no, let me put it on the side, kind of where the JHS red remote switch was. But I need something to elevate it. And I was like, what can I use? What can I use? I have this empty, just an empty, I don't know what model, mini pedal casing that I ordered so that I could fill up with ball bearings to add more weight to my modular double-decker pedal board. And I do have one of those already filled up with ball bearings to add more weight towards the front of it, so that when you open the riser, it doesn't fall over, right? It just creates more stability. Anyway, I had an extra mini pedal board casing, right? And I thought, well, maybe I'll use that to elevate it. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't used my Saturn Works summing patch bay / splitter unit. It's a passive unit. It's pretty cool. It was like $50, $50, something like that. And I've used it before for summing my Monolite and Monolite Plus pedal boards together, right? And those of you that know my modular setup, I have used it for that. I really like doing that for more of a soloistic scenario, not so much for recording or live use. But I had it off to the side, so I grabbed it. I'm like, man, this is the same size, mini pedal kind of specs. And so I put it on the board, it fit, and I was like, you know what, let's do it. It looks cool. I'll figure out what I can use the ins and outs for. I put the dual switch on top, and it worked. It looked good. It was functional, the right height, all that. And then I figured, well, let me start plugging something in here, right? So now that I have a little more space, I could exit my Swift Audio tuner, which is coming out from the right side of my Zoom MS60B, which is the first pedal in my Monolite board. So I took that that's going out into the tuner, out from the tuner to the Saturn Works summing pedal or splitter pedal. Meanwhile, I still have my regular left out going into the EHX, going into the Ampero 2 and out. So I was like, okay, cool. You know, I've essentially got two outs. I got the completely wet line in series, and then I have I have the Zoom and tuner into this other out, essentially, that can work via Saturn Works. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I can use that as a parallel board situation. Basically, it's being split here and easier access point out to get both things going if I want. Well, to my surprise, and I was like, well, let me try this out. I ended up plugging in my modular board into one of the front ports of the Saturn Works unit, while having I don't know what made me do this, while making my Ampero 2 circle back from its out back into the other port, which would have been an exit or an output of the Saturn Works unit, back into itself. And I was like, let me try this out, because I remember it being able to do so many different configurations, inputs and outputs, reversible, splitting, summing. Very cool unit. So then I plug it back in, I plug in my headphones, and I turn the volume up so slightly. I'm like, I don't want there to be some crazy oscillating feedback, crazy explosion coming through my ears, without me really knowing what's going to happen or what I'm doing. I'm just experimenting here. So I ended up plugging it in, and to my surprise, I was able to get the wet sounds out of my whole pedal board through one side of the unit, through one output. And when I flipped the switch on the Saturn Works unit, it took out the Ampero 2 and basically just ran everything else on that side through. So I guess really how it's function or can function in this particular situation is like an effects loop, only you don't have a pedal to turn it on or off. You don't have a foot switch to turn it on and off. You have a little toggle. You have to use your hand. But limited pedal board space. It is what it is, and it works. And it was pretty cool. I've never done an effects loop of that nature with a little pedal or hardware piece. I've messed with the effects loop in my Ampero 2 before, but that's definitely different. But I'm curious and excited to see what this can do in a live situation, and not so much a cover band performance. It'd be more like a solo thing where I'm going out on my Ampero 2 and tweaking some stuff that takes maybe a little more time while I'm still able to perform and do things with the rest of the effects pedals that I have available. So yeah, that was a cool little find. Again, Saturn Works. It's a passive splitter summing patch bay unit. It's very cool. So if you go to my Instagram, you'll probably see it on a recent post of where it's placed, the Pedalnetics dual switch placed on top. And so now I'm just getting more out of my mono light pedal board, which, you know, it can always be configured differently. And some of you might say, well, why don't you add on some sort of line isolator or DI thing underneath by Pedalnetics? I'm like, well, I have a little case that holds stuff besides the power bank or the power brick by Chalks. I don't know that I'm ready to explore that yet. I don't know that I want to commit to that DI situation yet. At that point, I may just take something else out, like a color box, and or I have a 1/4 inch to XLR adapter cable, which I use regularly, and I just keep it in the case. It's lightweight, and then if I need XLR out, boom, I just connect that to my Ampero 2 and to the house, and it works. Maybe it's not as clean, maybe it's not as ideal, but it functions. But a consideration for changing out the SaturnWorks unit would have been, or would be, to get a canvas line isolator, which is the same size essentially as the SaturnWorks unit. And now you got a line, an isolated line out, right? XLR out to the house to be used as the main or only out. But I don't know if I want to do that either, because the SaturnWorks unit is such a cool little, like, audible, hey, it can do a bunch of different little things, which seems all the more fun and usable than just having a DI that, well, just sends your sound to the house, right? Signal to the house. But who knows? Maybe in a situation, if I really need that, I could do it. At that point, would I come out of the right side of my Ampero 2 and leave it constantly plugged into the line isolator? I don't know. It could be nice to just always have it available, since I don't really run anything in stereo out of my Ampero 2. Or do I just leave it, you know, on the board, not connected, and only connected as needed? I don't know. But at that point, you don't really use the right out of the Zoom 60B just into the tuner, which I've always done, but it was nice to kind of get a different signal out in some sort of unique situation where I don't want to have the Ampero, you know, in connection with everything else. But we'll see. I'll keep messing with it. I'm eager to discover new ways of maximizing my pedal boards, which also brings me to my last point. Pedalnetics, right? The dual foot switch that I got. Loved it so much that I got another one. I ordered another one. It's yet to arrive. Not as fancy as this one, where it has like the lights that flicker on, but I'm gonna get it so that I can put it on the side of my modular double decker, so that it can connect to my HX1, which is underneath the riser, and that way I can still toggle up or down presets without having to open the actual riser or the hatch, right, on my Vertex board. So that is the vision. That is the new addition to maximizing my pedal boards, right? Maximizing my experience and access points, right, of effects. So thank you for listening. This podcast has been all over the place. I've been stumbling, stuttering, and probably going in circles and being inefficient. But thank you for checking this out. I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't do this on the regular. It was definitely fun to do a podcast weekly. I've broken that cycle, obviously, recently, but it's something I'll figure out how to get back on, hopefully, next week. So until next time, take care and have a good one.